Well, it's been over 10 years since the National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme came into existence. The Modi government claimed to have transformed what was the UPA government's flagship scheme. But today, the Supreme Court has torn into the centre over the delay in distribution of funds, especially to drought-hit states. The Apex Court observing that there is no point in having such schemes if employees in rural areas are not paid on time. But the rot within the NREGS runs deep. Sample this. In FY15, the centre claims to have provided employment to 3.8 crore households. However, just 23 lakh people got employment for more than 100 days in a year. That's just 6% of the total employed in rural areas. The picture is no better if you look at FY14 or FY13. The bottom line is this: rural India cannot rely on the NREGS as a consistent source of income. To discuss what transpired in court today, we're now joined by Yogendra Yadav of the Swaraj Abhiyan. Yogendra Yadav, appreciate you joining us here on CNBC TV 18. You have been present in court over the last 8 or 9 hearings. In fact, you were in court today as well. Is this just a fault of the central government? How much do state governments have to take responsibility for what is transpiring on the ground, which is a far cry from the numbers that are being projected both by the centre and in budgetary allocations?
Shireen, let me begin by thanking your channel for taking some consistent interest in drought, which is a rarity in Indian media. For much of the Indian media, this drought could have been taking place in Ethiopia. Having said that, on NREGA, I think the important thing is to remember what's actually happening on the ground. That notwithstanding these big declarations about 100 days, Modi government says we've actually increased it to 150, but on ground they are not delivering even 50 days per household. And as you pointed out, the number of households who have touched statutory 100 days limit is just 6%. So when all these things were brought to the court's attention, the court asked some very, very sharp questions to the government. Basically, our argument of Swaraj Abhiyan was that NREGA is not doing well, largely because central government is squeezing it dry of the funds. And this is not so much about the state government, Shireen, because the state governments contribute a tiny bit. They do just the 10% of labor budget and 25% of the material budget. So largely what happens is this, that on paper, NREGA is a demand-driven program. On paper, any labor in rural India can stand up and say, please give me work. The government is bound to give them work. But in reality, the government puts caps, informal, very clever ways of putting caps on this. And the message goes out to states, look, you don't have funds. And if states do not get fund transfer from the center, they hold back on these things. And every year, at the end of the financial year, there is a huge, staggering pending liability, which is illegal. This is what's happening, and today all of that came out in the court in quite open, and for once at least there was a very close scrutiny of a sheer illegality which has been going on in our system.
So you're saying that what the court has done in a sense is unravel the illegality as far as the disbursement of the funds for the NREGS is concerned. But Yogendra Yadav, the government to the court today has said that it will release 7,983 crores in the next week towards the NREGS. We also in this budget saw the government make a claim that it is allocating the highest ever funds for the NREGS. But given where the current situation, the current liability is, what will that finally translate into?
These are precisely some of the lies that we were able to expose. Number one, to say that this is highest allocation is not true. I mean, as someone, a student of economics, you would know this is only in nominal terms. In real terms, the allocation for NREG has gone down every year. Number two, that the government, the 7,000 crores that the government said they are going to release, they've actually said 11,000 crore, of which 7,000 would go to meeting the pending liability. So basically, the government is releasing no more than 3,000 crore rupees. And the actual pending liabilities, as on 31st of March, are 12,500 crore rupees. That's what we pointed out to the court. The government said triumphantly, sir, we would allot 11,000 crores in the next 3 days, don't worry. We said, my lord, but they owe 12,500 crores to the workers and for the labor budget. How is this going to meet? And that's the question the court has asked. And in very unusual and I would imagine a fairly hard move, the court has asked the government to file an affidavit by tomorrow morning to show how exactly they are going to meet their statutory obligations. The court asked them, you say it's 100-day scheme, you don't even give 50 days, you claim that you have increased 100 to 150, but you've not even reached 50. The court asked them, you know, with these kinds of delays, what is the point in having something like NREGA? And you know, we should all remember, NREGA as a scheme actually has its origins in drought relief. It was the Maharashtra Employment Guarantee Act, which came as a drought relief measure, which gave birth to NREGA. And NREGA not being used at a time of drought is such a pity, it's such a shame for the country.
You're absolutely right on that front, but let's see what transpires in court tomorrow when the government has been asked by the highest court of the land to submit its reply on the issues that were brought forward with regards to the disbursal of the NREGS. Yogendra Yadav, it's always a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you very much for joining us and taking us through what transpired in court today. And that is a story that we will continue to track here on CNBC TV 18.